Hello, and the purpose of this video is to introduce the Season 3 epistemological statement, and this epistemological statement is of course the manifesto that grounds this channel. This video will be the third, right? The third epistemological statement. The previous two epistemological statements for Season 1 or Season 2 are superseded by this statement. So I'm going to put links in the description in this video to the two previous to the epistemological statements for Season 1 and Season 2. But anyways, this video, like in Season 3, I'm going to try to keep all videos to under 5 minutes. But this video is going to be an exception, because in this video I have to cover several issues. And again, this epistemological statement is not going to be like a general philosophical statement as it was, for example, in the second epistemological statement. This is not going to be concerning itself so much with, issues of philosophy and cosmology and whatever, and the nature of reality and all that. This is going to be more about, post-metamodernism and how a post-metamodern development will happen. And I want to avoid the revenge of truth and the revenge of cynicism. Okay, I want to avoid that. Somebody else might take up those themes. I'm not going to. So I want to find another way to go post-metamodern, to develop in a post-metamodern direction without having to, sort of like return to those themes of trutherism and postmodern cynicism, like it was in the 1990s and 2000s. I don't want that. So yeah, but I'm gonna see how this channel evolves or whatever. But anyways, okay, the first thing I want to look at in the third epistemological statement is the issue of modernity. And I argue that the nature of modernity is post-truth and post-democracy, right? And these themes, okay, first let's tackle post-truth. And in order to define these terms, I am using Wikipedia. And the reason I use Wikipedia, as is traditional in this channel, is not because I am intellectually lazy. I know there are other sources, but because Jehovah's Witnesses say that Wikipedia is edited by demons, ergo I use Wikipedia. Okay, and by the way, here in Sweden, Wikipedia is trying to raise funds. So I gave some money to them, a very small amount. But, if you're in Sweden and, the Wikipedia, algorithm, targets you and asks you for money, if you can give to them, please give some money to them. Anyways, Wikipedia is very useful and necessary. Okay, anyways, what is post-truth? According to the Wikipedia definition, the definition that appears in Wikipedia, post-truth is a periodizing concept referring to a transitional or and historically specific, empirically observable public anxiety about public truth claims and authority to be a legitimate public truth teller, right? There is also a hostility to experts, right? Experts are out, It also refers to the theories about the historically specific converging causes that have produced its communication forms and effects. The term was named Word of the Year in 2016 by the Oxford Dictionary, where it is defined as, quote, relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief, end quote. Yeah, in other words, post-truth means, the upsurge of subjectivity, against, the, so-called objectivity of the experts and the authorities and whatever, right? So, yeah. Anyways, it's a rebellion against, experts on authority and fact, right? The dictatorship of fact, People are tired of facts. People are tired of experts. People are tired of authoritative figures or whatever, telling them what is true and what isn't and what they should and shouldn't do. So people are arming their subjectivity, right? That is post-truth. And, like I said in a poem video that I posted, this side of Me Too, Donald Trump, QAnon, and anti-vax, evidence is no longer required for construction of truth narratives. Okay, it's not it is the case that, I can construct a truth narrative without, referring to evidence or anything, So that is possible now. And, if you haven't realized that, we live in a post-truth environment where evidence is no longer required for formulation of truth narratives, then you are living in the past, okay? Another concept, another feature of modernity is post-democracy. And this applies to the political system, right? Post-democracy. And the term in Wikipedia, in the Wikipedia entry on this, it says, the term post-democracy was used by Warwick University political scientist Colin Crouch in 2000 in his book, Coping with Post-Democracy. It designates states that operate by democratic systems. Elections are held. In Sweden, it's every 4 years. Governments fall, and there is freedom of speech, which in the European Union, the European Convention on Human Rights says that there is freedom of speech, but it also says there as a disclaimer that the state has a right to restrict it. So in the European Union, there is no real free speech, right? They restrict the speech. So in the United States, there is free speech, the First Amendment, but not here, not in Europe, not really. I mean, there is, but it's conditional and it's limited, Anyhow, okay, it designates states that operate by democratic systems where elections are held and there is freedom of speech, but whose application is progressively limited. A small elite is taking the tough decisions and co-opts the democratic institutions. And I think in Sweden, the small elite in question is the oligarchy of politicians in the parliament, right? The oligarchy of professional politicians, the partitocracy in the parliament. With the exception of the Swedish Democrats and the Greens, all the other parties, are part of this, oligarchy of political flacks who decide what, should and shouldn't be, who arrogates power to themselves, right? It's an oligarchy system, an oligarchy that it is elected but not subject to recall or term limits. It's a small elite of professional politicians. Anyways, Professor Crouch further developed the idea in an article called "Is There a Liberalism Beyond Social Democracy?" for the think tank Policy Network, and in his subsequent book, The Strange Non-Death of Neoliberalism, right? So, okay, the term post-democracy was used by Crouch to design an evolution within democracies during the 21st century. It is a polemical term because it calls attention to recognize democracies that are losing some of their foundations and evolving towards an aristocratic regime. And I mean, in the United States, you already have aristocracy. I mean, the executive aristocracy that runs corporate America, they are an aristocracy in the sense of, for example, the Roman patricians, And in Sweden, there is also a small oligarchy. I've heard it's like 15 families and 41 billionaires or whatever, elite. The term post-democracy may also denote a general conception of a post-democratic system that may involve other structures of group decision-making and governance than the ones found in contemporary or historical democracy, okay? So, yeah. Other structures of group decision-making and governance. And like in the United States, they have the continuation of government infrastructure, and P2OG and all those things. I'm sure in Sweden, too, they have some sort of continuation of government infrastructure. I've heard the Swedish state has a clandestine side to it. Like there is such thing as a black police, and they have black detention centers and all these other stuff. I've heard that from people in the far left. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've also heard it from immigrants. I've met 2 immigrants who were detained in places other than the immigrant detention that were very restrictive, and they were in the city jail. So, when I was the first time I was in the immigrant detention in 2007, the first time I was there, I met a man who was transferred from one of those facilities to the immigrant detention, and he was happy. He was so happy because he felt, so free and relieved. And I was, what are you talking about? We are imprisoned here. He says, oh, No, you don't know what you're talking about. There is worse places than this, he says. This type of detention is the tip of the iceberg, he said. And then fast forward to 2013, I met another guy when I was in the immigrant camp in a city called Deye, back in 2013, in the spring of 2013. I met a guy from North Africa who told me he had been held in detention in some place where it was like cubicles, and the walls were transparent, and there was only a cot, and they monitor you 24/7, and you couldn't keep anything in the cubicle and whatever. I mean, that's what I was told. Again, I cannot corroborate any of this, the clandestine side of the Swedish state, so I don't know. I've only experienced the city jail, the immigrant detention. That's it. My first, Alexander Solzhenitsyn in Gulag Archipelago, he dedicates a chapter where he talks about his first cell, and he says that your first cell is like your first love, right? Alexander Solzhenitsyn says that in Gulag Archipelago. For me, my first cell was not in Sweden. My first cell was in Israel, specifically at Tel Aviv airport, where I was denied entry the first time I went to Israel. The second time I got in, but the first time I was denied entry. And I was put in this cell for 3 days where I had to await deportation in the airport, at Tel Aviv airport. And in that cell, there was a guy from Russia and 2 young men from the Czech Republic. The guy from Russia was 18, and the 2 boys from the Czech Republic were, I think, 20 and 21. And at the time, I was about 20 something, early mid 20s, I think. I forgot, how old was I in 2001? 23, maybe 4, something like that, with those ages. And the 4 of us were in that cell for 3 days, and so when I was reading Gulag Archipelago and Alexander Solzhenitsyn discusses his first cell, I was like, oh, okay, I know what he's talking about. Yeah, I've been there in Israel, so yeah. But anyways, that's a tangent. It has nothing to do with the Swedish state, whatever. I don't know. Structures of group decision making and governance that they once found in contemporary historical democracy. The central bank. The central bank is an economic government that is unelected. So anyways, let's see. The actual definition by Professor Crouch of post-democracy. A post-democratic society is one that continues to have and to use all the institutions of democracy, but in which they increasingly become a formal shell. The energy and innovative drive pass away from the democratic arena and into small circles of a political economic elite. Okay, and I think that's the case, and not just in Sweden, but the entire Western Empire, including the United States, the whole Western Empire. Sweden is just a province of the Western Empire. Sweden is a subset of the European subset of the Western Empire. But again, like I said in other videos, the way it works in the European Union, the Germans allow the provinces to govern themselves. It's kind of like the same arrangements the Romans had with Roman Judea, where they allowed for the Herod Antipas to rule as king, but the Roman procurator was watching over him, and beyond the Roman procurator was the governor of Syria, who had the ultimate jurisdiction over Judea. Same arrangement. And overall, of course, is the divine Augustus, which is the American government. So yeah. But the entire Western Empire is post-democratic at this point. So the nature of contemporary reality, modernity. The current modernity is a post-truth environment and a post-democratic environment. Okay, so post-truth existing in context of post-democracy. That is the modernity. All right. So that takes us to the second issue here. Where is post-metamodernism going? Right. Where is the post-metamodern trend going? So I've talked, in the introduction to season 3, the short video, that I think that two possibilities for post-Metamodern development. And I mean, the post-Metamodern, cycle begins in 2018, right? Because I mean, the cycle of Metamodernism went from the moment Luke Turner published the Metamodern Manifesto in 2011 to a conference in Paris, where the issue of post-Metamodernism came up. So that conference in Paris in 2018 was, the end of the cycle of Metamodernism and the beginning of the post-Metamodern cycle that we're in on now. So the 2020s is the decade of post-Metamodernism. So what are two possible trends with Metamodernism? One would be the revenge of postmodern cynicism, right? A revival of the kind of cynicism that existed in the 1990s and 2000s, right? And this sort of radical cynicism that, denied that anything has meaning, denied all forms of idealism and, deride them as and was anti-ideological and anti-historical and anti-political, all that could come back, That's one possibility. A revival, the revenge of postmodernism, right? And then another possibility is, of course, the revenge of truth, right? And the revenge of truth could be, a massive revival of trutherism. So things like the 9/11 revival in 2021. In 2021, there was a 9/11 truth revival, right? And I made some videos covering that, I added myself to that. I added myself to the 9/11 truth revival, right? That one I support. That I support. That aspect of the revenge of truth, I support. The revenge of 9/11 truth, yeah, I support that. That trutherism I'm with, right? But other forms of trutherism that could avenge themselves, especially in the theological sense, would be creationism, intelligent design, and the return of Adam and Eve, right? The revenge of Adam and Eve. Because, I've seen already on the internet, there is tons of material, criticizing population genetics, saying that, apologetics, mostly apologetics, defending the existence of Adam and Eve. There is more material now defending the existence of Adam and Eve than there is, material, proposing, the population genetics, the premise that, it is scientifically impossible that, 7 billion humans today descend from 2 persons 6,000 years ago. But apparently that is being tossed aside. And we have, the revenge of Adam and Eve, right? Happening now. And you can look it up on the internet. Just do a web search. Another thing that's going to revive, another truth that might come, truth that might come back is, Holocaust denial. Holocaust denial, it's already fashionable again. I've seen stuff sort of like a here in Sweden. If you look at the far right, internet, and I am a fan of the Swedish far right internet. I love the Swedish far right. I am against them politically. I mean, I am committed to the politics of the Swedish far left. I support the Swedish far left. But there is a Swedish far right, and the Swedish far right is bigger than the Swedish far left, and there is a revival of Holocaust denial going on, okay, and also a rehabilitation of Hitler, which started in Germany with this thing that Hitler was not vicious, right? So that's back. Holocaust denial is another trutherism, another aspect of the revenge of truth. That would be a post-Metamodern development. And finally, Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses call their beliefs the truth. And right now Jehovah's Witnesses are out, right? In the Metamodern era, because it was post-truth. One of the main features of Metamodernism was post-truth. So Jehovah's Witnesses were out because they were into the truth, right? And the truth was out. So. But now that we're in a post-Metamodern, cycle, is the revenge of truth. So you could have a revival of Jehovah's Witnesses, like the revenge of the Jehovah's Witnesses, right? So the Jehovah's Witness community needs to watch out for this, because, if the Jehovah's Witnesses take revenge or whatever, riding the wave of post-Metamodernism, they could cause damage, to the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. So the ex-Jehovah's Witness community is going to have to steel itself